All right, y'all. This is very interesting, to say the least. Kaya Jones. She used to be in the girl group, the Pussycat Dolls. For those of you who remember the Pussycat Dolls, this was like, what, 2003, 2004? This is kind of back in the day. Kaya Jones has said some very interesting things about her time in the Pussycat Dolls. Essentially, what she said is that the girls were being pimped out, for lack of better words. She said they were being pimped out. She felt like she was pressured to sleep with people, and nobody really believed her. Initially, she made these claims in 2017. Nobody believed her. And now with all this Diddy stuff coming out, more and more people are starting to take a look at what she's saying. She even said that she was pressured to delete her child in order to remain in the group. And she shared a very incredible, heartbreaking, eye-opening testimony about how the Holy Spirit essentially instructed her to leave the group and walk away from millions and millions of dollars. And I want to play this video. And this is on the back of this story that has resurfaced just this month of Kaya Jones doubling down on the claim that she felt pressured to sleep with people while in the group. So this is a story that came out in October. But like I said, this is originally from 2017 when she initially made the claims. I believe that was the initial claims. Now, I want to play this video. This is some heavy stuff. When we talk about the darkness that's present within the industry, when we talk about the spiritual warfare that is present within the industry, this is the epitome of what I mean. All right. So let me play this clip and then we'll have a conversation.
We're just going to go right into it because I found it so interesting, and it kind of shows a time where we are in society as a whole, where it's an over-sexualized society. Yeah. But one of the things you mentioned about being in the Pussycat Dolls was that it wasn't necessarily a girl group, but it felt more like a prostitution ring. Yeah. And I'm so curious to hear you kind of explain that to us.
Well, and I think Britney Spears also has said this very eloquently, and it's hard to say this because it's not something that makes us look good. It doesn't frame the person speaking on this issue correctly. But Britney Spears also said that she felt like someone being trafficked. That's a very heavy statement because that's a very real issue in the world today. What does being trafficked feel like? What does being prostituted feel like? It feels like you're a slave, literally, to your dream, and the powers that be are holding the keys to the kingdom. You have no access to personal thoughts, space, choices, decisions. You are a owned commodity. You're not allowed to think for yourself, feel for yourself, date for yourself, want for yourself. What you eat has been decided for you. Where you live is going to be decided for you. Who your friends are is decided for you. Who you date, ultimately, you can't have a child. I mean, they're like, the level of control is to a point of like, who am I? Saying, no, I can't tell you how many times I had to push men off of me, tell them no. There was no one in my corner. And I think that's where Britney and I, when we're saying what we're saying it from a place of, when you feel like you're cattle and you're controlled and you just want everything to go smoothly, like just go in through this door, just go in through there, or just do what they say, because you don't want to deal with the fact that standing up for yourself becomes exhausting. And every day you try to stand up for yourself, but you're so tired, you're so hungry. And ultimately it's like, well, if I stand up for myself, will I be able to support myself and my family and all of these things? And when your body is now up for grabs, this is where we really have to take a hard look at ourselves. And for me, I had to take a hard look at myself when I had two young fans in the audience of our show, one being about 4 or 5 years old, the other being about 6 or 7, looking up at me like I was a Spice Girl, the way I looked to the Spice Girls. They were looking up at the Pussycat Dolls like, wow. And when you see these two little faces, at that moment, I was going through an abortion. I'm losing my child in real time. I'm being told I was fat before this encounter. Before I go on stage, I'm supposed to have super confidence. I'm losing my child. These two little girls are looking at me going, wow, mom, she's a pussycat doll. If you don't have a reverence in that moment of what you're doing matters, and that these young women are going to have this as their focal point of what beautiful is, what fame is, what success is, And it doesn't say, nothing on me in that moment said, caution, this is a lie. Nothing. Nothing was saying that. And I was a lie in that moment. There was nothing beautiful about me. I was tainted. I was destructive. I was destroyed. I was completely enchained and in bondage to the devil or the enemy or the realm of death, if you will, where I was living in my worst self. I was not living in my purpose. My purpose was to change the world, to use my voice, to empower young women. And now I was basically saying, well, you can be, sexually overly perverse, doing things that you're not happy about, low self-esteem, which leads to promiscuity, ultimately, which leads to you having an abortion that you wish you never even encountered because it's painful beyond measure. Do you ever get over it? Never. Never get over it. It is something that you will live with for the rest of your life. And when it hits women at a later time, it is something that is so painful. So that was the aha for me to go, I have to leave this institution.
Exactly. What you're describing is grooming. You were groomed to act a certain way, be a certain way, look a certain way. You were legitimately groomed. And at that point, some people are like, well, why can't you just walk away? And ultimately you did. And I so appreciate that in that moment, you were able to look at those little girls and
man, her statement just gave me the chills. She said, they pressured her to delete her child. And previous to that, they were calling her fat and stuff like that. And they pressured her to delete her child. So she's in the process of doing so. But at the same time, she's on stage performing for a show. Two young fans, little girls, come up to her, idolizing her, not knowing that she's actively going through that process, not knowing that she's actively fighting darkness, fighting demons, fighting spiritually. But yet these 2 little eyeballs or 4 little eyeballs are looking up at her, idolizing her, wanting to be like her. But then she said the effect of, deleting your child, the effect that women feel later on in their life, that regret later on in life, you never get over it. I don't think people talk about that enough. We talk about all from the other side of the argument. They talk about, this is your right. This is your choice. This is your decision. This is your empowerment. This is your freedom. Not understanding that same quote unquote freedom is the very thing that's going to keep you in bondage later on. Now, of course, God can deliver us. God can heal us. But I don't think you ever really forget something like that, I think you're forever impacted. Let's get back to it.
say, this isn't okay. I don't want them to look up to me in this way. I don't want them to look up to this lifestyle. And actually, in all the research that I did about you, I had no idea that you had something that you have shared before. Or
I have been, the Holy Spirit put on my heart to actually share my story about the abortions I've had, because there were multiple. Because after the first one, you don't think you've done anything wrong. It's been normalized. And what is a line until you've crossed it? You don't know what a line is. Once you've crossed that line, it's a very slippery slope to continue to cross those lines. This is why, and I knew when I was going to speak on it, and thank you for even setting up this question, because people really haven't asked me about this question correctly. And I want to be very firm on it, because it is a situation for me that...
Is this the first time you're sharing about it?
Actually, probably yes. Like on camera of talking about it. Probably, yeah. In a way where I can actually talk about the whole scenario of what's taken place in my life. Mm. Unfortunately for fame. So my first actually took place before the Pussycat Dolls. When I was 16, 17. And I was very young. So very young in the music industry, not receiving any guidance other than what I believed, right? And I was on the birth control pill at that time, so I figured, well, the pill didn't work, and it didn't. It actually didn't. So I didn't feel that was murder, if you will. I didn't have any understanding of it. I didn't speak to my family about it. I didn't speak to anyone about it. I went and got it done, and I didn't need anyone's consent. I didn't need anyone's consent to have that. That's been going on for some time, that you don't, 16 is of the age that you don't need consent, and I didn't. When I then was in the Pussycat Dolls, again, I became pregnant, and I was told to get rid of it. And at that point, because I had already gone through an abortion previously, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, right? And so again, gone through that. Then again, at 30 years old, I was raped because, again, of having no self-esteem, going through these forms of abuse in my earlier life, poor choices with someone I had been with in my past, trusted him, didn't think it was a big deal, but he then forced himself upon me, became pregnant, wanted to keep the baby, and ultimately, due to the stress of all of it, there were complications, and that led to another abortion. So when I say I understand, I wholeheartedly understand. But this is why, from that last day of that whole synopsis of this train of trauma, I became very, very adamant about speaking about pro-life. And a lot of people didn't understand why. You and all your audience now understand why, because this is actually the first time I've spoken publicly about each one. And each one I've had to pray about, each one I've had to talk to God about. It has been a very private journey in getting my well-being mentally, emotionally, spiritually intact. But unfortunately, people don't want to talk to young women about it in the way that I feel we should start talking to young women about it. Instead of just demonizing it or putting all these regulations, we have to come up with some kind of understanding of the damage, because it's very damaging. And when you've had one, you think you can keep having them. You don't think it's a big deal. And I genuinely think our culture has turned it into a form of, it's turned it into a form of contraception. Like it's, it's instead of using a condom, you can just have it, just get rid of it. It's a clump of cells, have it. And it's like, no. This is very, very serious. And we do need to discuss it. But of course, because of the two I had in my earlier years, I do believe in the later years. And that's why when someone says, well, because of, I've gone through it all. I've gone through it all. And I will assure you, you will regret it your whole life. There will nothing. Even if I become a mother tomorrow and I'm happily married and all is well, I'm still going to regret the 3 children I did not have.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I feel so honored that you decided to open up today to me and to my audience, because I think this is a message that everybody needs to hear. And I'm 100% on board with you when you say that this is what people need to hear. And I truly believe, my situation was totally different, but I think it's women like you. And I have another friend named Tony McFadden. I don't know if you're familiar with her or not, but she had and it almost killed her, really. She hemorrhaged out afterward. And these are the stories that people need to hear, because there is regret and there is pain after it. And it's not something that just makes your problems go away. And yes, there is healing and there is forgiveness. And obviously, God's grace is bigger than any sin that you can ever commit. But this is something that the young girls don't know. They're told that it's like just ripping off a Band-Aid, or it's like getting your teeth cleaned, or clipping a toenail. Like, it's just this really easy thing. But there is an emotional, mental side of this.
It's really disgusting how normalized it's become. It's really disgusting how normalized it's become. It's almost just like a routine, like, checkup at this point. That's how it's being framed. And it's disgusting that we live in a society that puts such little value on life that they literally have pills that you can take that will induce a miscarriage. So now you don't even got to go into the clinic no more. You just pop two pills and you're good, quote unquote. Oh, how far we have fallen.
That nobody talks about. So I think your story and stories like Tony's, they help people realize that there is this emotional side of it. There is pain that comes with it.
Had I had the opportunity, or even just one person saying, you can do it, and helping me figure that out. I didn't know there were organizations that could have helped me. I certainly didn't know that I could have done both. I was so panicked in all situations that it was just, and the second situation, I actually hemorrhaged and was very ill. I became very ill. As well as the third, very ill. So that's the thing, is with the first one, there may have been no complication, but by the time that I'm 19 or 29, almost 30 years old, having another major complication, this is why now I'm completely single. I'm not having any kind of relationship with anyone. I'm celibate because I don't want to use birth control.
She's in the Pussycat Dolls, right? I think I have a photo from one of these articles. She's in the Pussycat Dolls. And man, these outfits back then are just atrocious. Like, what are we trying to do here? You know what I'm saying? Like, I get this. This is like 20 some years ago, but that's awful. She's in the Pussycat Dolls, right? Gets pregnant. Look at the enemy. Look at the enemy. Gets pregnant. Is told to get rid of it. This is her dream. This is something that she's worked. This is something that she prayed about. She said she prayed that she would have a voice like Whitney Houston. She prayed to be, a singer. And she's young and she felt like, hey, this is my opportunity. This is an answered prayer, right? Not really knowing any better about the industry and what it's really about and what they're really, standing for. And so she's in this position where she complies, gets rid of it, quote unquote. But for what? For fame, for fortune, for money, for notoriety, for fans, for influence. And then literally in the middle of that process of her, quote unquote, getting rid of it, she's confronted with these two girls who are looking up to her and want to be just like her. The devil is so slick if you're not careful. Because she could have been like, you know what? Man, this is terrible. This is traumatic. This is horrible. But look what all I have. I have these fans looking up to me. I have this money. I have this record deal. I have this opportunity. I'm traveling the world. And these kids want to be like me. She could have used that opportunity to continue down that path of destruction, but she was able to realize exactly what it was, and she got out. A lot of people, this is what I'm saying, a lot of people don't realize it until they're so entrenched in it that now it's fully become their idol. It's fully become the thing that they worship. And now they already have their God in their success. So there's no room for God. Yahweh. There's no room for him. It's a crazy story. And more and more and more and more we hear about stuff like this. At what point do you think people are just going to be like, yo, let me just tell you everything. Let's just keep it real. Let me just tell you what it is. Like, when are we going to have more and more people just come out and be like, yo, this is exactly what's going on? The reason I think they're not doing that is because, like I said, they're so entrenched in it that it's become their God. That's what they worship. And anything that they can do to continue to climb up that ladder of success within the entertainment industry, they're going to do that. Because that's what they serve. That's what they worship. And they're going to be obedient to who they worship or what they worship, which is really the enemy. It's really the devil. This is not the will of God. This is clearly the will of the devil. It's no different than when Jesus was tempted. When Jesus was tempted for 40 days and the devil came up to him and said, yo, you can have all of this. I'm paraphrasing. You can have all of this. All you got to do is bow down to me. I'm paraphrasing, right? But that's essentially what he said. And it goes back to what I said before. The devil doesn't have life to offer you. All the devil has to offer you is death. Everything that the devil can offer you, the money, the fame, the fortune, the relationship, the status, the success, all of those things are going to pass away. None of those things are going to be portable when you leave this earth. So you need to seek the one who comes to give life and life more abundantly. And his name is Jesus Christ. Let me know what y'all think, man. Get in my comments, like this video. I'm out, y'all.